Greetings, Cleveland, and welcome to Conversations with Cal, the show that initiates engaging conversation. I'm your host, Cornell Calhoun III, and I'm thrilled to be at the iconic YWCA and honored to have as my guest, Miss Helen Forbes Fields. Miss Forbes Fields, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start a conversation.
Absolutely. Let's get started.
I'm so honored to have you, here.
Well, we are very grateful you asked us to come.
I know you grew up in the Glenville area, 114th St. Clair area, attended Patrick Henry.
I did.
Now, was there ever any thought that you might go to Glenville? I only ask that because I taught at Glenville for a while, and I know you went on to Lutheran East, so you there was never any chance that you were going to Glenville, right?
Well, I didn't have much say in it, so that was up to my mother and father, who decided to move me to a different school in 7th grade. I enjoyed being at Patrick Henry, had no issues, I didn't think, really, when I went there, but gosh, that was back in 7th grade. They made a decision that I would go to Lutheran schools. And then I have two younger sisters who then followed and went to Mimi and Lauren, who went to Lutheran schools as well. And we all graduated from Lutheran East High School.
Because they pulled you out of Patrick Henry and you went to like St. Paul's, right?
Boy, you know all my history.
Well,
Who knows all of that? Who knows all of that? Yes, they did. I left, I think after half a year at Patrick Henry. I think there were numerous fights and things like that happened in public school, but I knew to keep away. And then I went to St. Paul Lutheran, which was located at 55th between St. Clair and Superior in the church. And then that closed towards the end of 7th grade. And then I went to St. John Lutheran, located out on Mayfield. And from there, Lutheran East.
Okay, and then from Lutheran East, Spelman.
Then from Lutheran East, actually, I went to Ohio State 1 year.
Oh, yeah, for 1 year.
For 1 year. And what's really interesting, I had my favorite cousin, Eleanor Shelton, who was really trying to talk to me about going to HBCU, was very interested. I was in going to Howard. But by that time, I had been accepted at Ohio State. But she sat me down right before I left to talk about HBCU, brought her friend down the street who went to Spelman, and they both introduced me to the concept of going to HBCU, showed me yearbooks, were really pointing out individuals that they knew, because my cousin went to Central State, and also my mother, but people they knew who had moved on into professional life. So I went to Ohio State with this knowledge of Central State and Spelman College. And I would say after a couple months, I knew that Ohio State was not the place for me.
Too big?
Very big. And so I applied to Spelman and got in. And I'm telling you, the day I arrived, I wanted to kiss the ground when I arrived at Spelman College. And I have loved it ever since.
And then you went on to Howard?
I went on to Howard School of Law, Howard University School of Law. I got my law degree. I actually met my husband, Daryl, at law school. I said that he's the reason I passed the course called Uniform Commercial Code. He helped me pass that course. And so from there, we fell in love, got married, and now this year we'll be married 40 years, and we have 3 adult children.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
Talk a little about growing up in the Glenville area with a legend, your father, City Council President George Forbes.
Well, I grew up in Glenville, as you said, on East 114th Street. And our community was very close-knit. And it really didn't matter that, we didn't think of it as growing up with a legend. It was my father, right? My mother stayed home and really made sure that my sisters and I led the straight and narrow path. My father was very active in those days growing up in politics, with Carl Stokes being in city council. My uncle, his brother Zeke, was very active with politics. And so that's what I remember more of the neighborhood, and him being the councilman, which at that point was Ward 27, and being active in Ward Club, my mother and father. But that was all made up of neighbors, right. People you grew up with. Right. And so I would say the community I grew up in was all about being in a very close-knit community. And I'm still in touch with many of those people we grew up with way back then, even though most of us have left the area. But it was a very close-knit area where everyone on our street, on the end of the street where we live, most of the people came from the South. They were all part of the Great Migration. And so my neighbors, mothers and fathers who were there raising their kids, worked in the industrial area around us in Glenville. But everybody looked out for each other. Our next door neighbor, Mrs. Tart, would really get after you if you were doing something that you weren't supposed to be doing outside. Yeah, right. I mean, it was that type of community, playing in the street. And actually, it was a really wonderful place to grow up. It really was.
Talk a little bit about, because you did a lot of traveling when you were young. Your parents went different places, took you and your sisters different places. And, that was important. And I remember you telling in an interview about the time when they thought you were a flight attendant because you guys were somewhere. And talk a little bit about that. That's just blew my mind. I mean,
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, even though we grew up in Glenville, my mother and father were very intentional about getting us out of the neighborhood and being able to see the world. And so, look, many times in the summer, we spent, especially my sister who's next to me, Mimi, she and I would spend summers in Memphis. We would go back when my grandmother was still alive and my aunts were alive, and stay with them and stay in the South. I guess that was part of leaving the South, coming north, but you wanted to make sure your kids had a taste of that, right?
Sure.
So we did that growing up, but we also traveled, and primarily in the Caribbean area. But what I remember is traveling, and we would often be the only Black family in hotels.
Right.
And people always very curious as to how we got there.
Right.
And so I think I developed this armor very early to be able to respond very quickly to anyone who would question how we ended up in a hotel or how did we end up on an airplane. Right. To be able to travel. But yes, one time we had a lady who came up to me. My God, I must have been 15 or 16 years old. There is no way I look like a flight attendant, right? And I had my little sisters with me. And she wanted to know, how did we end up there? That you must be a flight attendant to be here at the hotel. So we learned very quickly how to respond in a way that nobody would ask us that question again. So part of that, I guess, it has not left me in terms of knowing how to respond to people who ask very stupid questions.
31 years you practiced law.
I did.
The family law, and then from there you went to the United Way.
Yes.
What did you do there, Ms. Forbes?
So at United Way, and let me just say, I practiced, you're right, 31 years. Wanted to do something different, and so I went over to United Way. And I initially came over as vice president of community impact. And that's the area where you are in charge of allocating dollars to nonprofits. So I headed that up. And I also served as general counsel. So I reviewed all our contracts or wrote our contracts because there were quite a few actually that existed between the United Way and the other entities.
Because you had I think it was $33 million. Is that what they raised at the United
Yeah,
Way?
when I was there, we did raise over $30 million. Not all of it was allocated to nonprofits, but certainly most of it was. And so when I came over, we were funding probably about at least 80 nonprofits. And our job was to really keep track of the nonprofits, making sure that they used the grant dollars in the way that they said they wanted to use them, determine what the needs were, and then determine who would receive the dollars. And we usually had a volunteer committee that worked with us to make a determination who would receive the dollars. So I headed that up, and then I moved into an executive vice president role and really headed up many of the areas throughout United Way, from 211, as I mentioned, community impact. Then I was charged with being over board relationships, board management. And then at that point, when I was there, we really were very active in making the connection between racism and poverty, and being very transparent about it and speaking openly about it. Because Cleveland's one of the poorest cities, metropolitan cities in the U.S. We lead in terms of childhood poverty and senior poverty. And so we talked very openly about racism and poverty. And so we made a decision to start an area where we focused on racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Wow. And I headed up that area, as well as I headed up our office in Geauga.
Geauga County,
yeah.
And that was a perfect segue to come to the YWCA, because the mission is to eliminate racism and empower women, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right. You're right.
And 1868 it was founded.
Yes.
That was right after the Civil War.
Right after the Civil War. And what happened, more women were coming into the city of Cleveland who needed services, who needed assistance. And so the YWCA was founded then. Mm. And to really help women in terms of their spiritual and secular growth within the city of Cleveland.
Talk a little bit about the programs. I know you have the Early Learning Center.
Yes.
And then you have the housing. I think you have 23 units of housing.
Right.
You
right.
Talk a little bit about that.
So, it's interesting. Everyone has heard about the YWCA. So many of us know about the YWCA, but people don't know exactly what the services are that we provide.
I didn't know until I started researching.
People are shocked about the type of work and the impact that we have, probably with over 1,600 women each year. So we focus on women who have been unhoused or are unhoused. We focus on women who are suffering from mental illness, as well as early education with our Early Learning Center. So in this building where we are right now, right here at 40th and Prospect, we have a preschool for children ages 3 through 5. And so we are educating those young children to make sure they're kindergarten ready. But we're also 2-generational. So we are also providing wraparound services to the parents or caregivers of those young children. Many of our families have lived in the shelter system. Or we deliberately recruit families who are in shelter to make sure that education is available for their children just as it's available for anybody else in the city of Cleveland. Or if they're not in the shelter system, many of our families have been unhoused at some point and could still very well be unhoused now. And so that's our focus with our children. So we provide what we call trauma-informed care for our young children. We meet them where they are. We meet our families where they are, providing that nurturing care the children need in addition to the education. And so this year we anticipate we'll have at least 15 children who will leave us to go on to kindergarten and to be successful in their education. But we're working with their parents so they understand child development and what education looks like. And
So the Y actually has 3 facilities. Is that correct?
yeah, we provide services over 4 buildings now. Right now, we're providing as well. We have a shelter for women, and we have 2 buildings right now that we're operating the shelter for women.
Okay.
Average age at our shelter is about 45 years old.
And you take anyone, right? That's the
we are low
fabulous,
barrier, so that means we accept anyone who comes to our doors, and anyone can stay with us. The only prohibition is if you are somehow that can ensure that you are banned from the shelter. It only relates to if you are physically violent with staff or another guest. We are seeing about 230 women every day who are seeking shelter with us. Average stay is about 120 days. I mean, we really work with the women so that they can move out of our shelter and have permanent housing. And then we also have a building where we have older adults, and we provide housing for them. That's on the near west side. It's called Cogswell Hall. So that's really our focus on adults who have suffered from some type of homelessness, as well as young adults. I didn't mention our program called Independence Place. And those are young adults, 18 through 24 years old, who live right upstairs. We have 23 apartments upstairs.
Okay, upstairs.
And many of our young people have aged out of foster care, and they have no home, no support system, nowhere to go. And so we have these 23 apartments for them, but we're also teaching them life skills. We don't want them to stay with us forever, but we want to ensure that when they leave us, that they're successful in their endeavors when they leave the YWCA.
What's the most rewarding aspect of working in your position at the Y?
The most rewarding really is showing up every day. I tell our staff, if we help one person a day, we've done our job. When I was at United Way, we looked at all of these nonprofits. We provided funding for nonprofits, and I realized early on, when you're working with a nonprofit entity, you're working with the human lives, right? We're not creating widgets. We can't show progress each and every day because you're dealing with the human condition. And if we are providing services and assistance to our community, which allows them to thrive when they leave us, then we truly have done our job here. And so I would say just showing up here every day, seeing the impact that we have from the young babies that we have, making sure they can go to kindergarten and be successful, making sure we're teaching parents how to parent and to make sure their kids and be proud of their kids, which they are, to make sure that they are successful when they go on to schooling. Our young adults who are upstairs, if they're able to stay with us, develop life skills, how to keep their apartments. It's as simple as how to keep your apartment clean. Learning driver's education. Many of our young people don't have a driver's license. Teaching them about driver's education, helping them get a job, helping them stay in school, go on to school, go to Tri-C. If we can do those types of things with the population we serve, then we really have done an amazing job. The people I work with are amazing in terms of their dedication and really in terms of the impact that we see every day.
You have a wonderful event coming up, the Women of Achievement Awards.
Yes.
I think June 4th, Wednesday, June 4th,
Yeah.
at Severance Hall.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about that. I know
Starts at 5 o'clock.
Starts at 5 o'clock. And,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and the tickets are like $150.
$150.
Yeah.
You go just right on the website, YWCA of and buy a ticket. We've been doing this for over 50 years.
Because this is the 47th year, right?
Yes. Honoring women who have been able to reach career heights. But not just that. It's about women who have dedicated themselves to community service and mentoring other women. And really taking a moment to give them their flowers. I mean, we are here at YWCA to provide support and encouragement to women no matter what your station in life may be. From the women we serve at the shelter, 230 women every day that we're there to provide support and nurture for them. But to really give the women who have really reached these career heights, give them their flowers and give them nurture and support as well. And let them know that they're being seen for the great work that they're doing. It's an inspiring night. We hear from the women. This year we're honoring 9 women. Congresswoman Shontel Brown is one of them. Jasmine Long, a young woman who has really taken Birthing Beautiful Communities, a nonprofit, to a whole different level in terms of services that are being offered to the community among many. And we're there to really recognize them for all the wonderful work they've been engaged in. Hear from them, they tell us their story. And not only do we recognize them, we recognize a young woman right here at YWCA who's furthering her own career aspirations by going to school. So we choose someone every year, and we really lift them up during this program as well. So it's really an amazing program where we are celebrating women no matter where you are in life.
Why is that so important in today's society?
Yeah, well, I would say that there are not enough programs that are out there celebrating women. We are all out here doing the hard work, engaged in hard work, and we want to really recognize the work that women are doing in our community. And I think any opportunity that you have to celebrate, I mean, the world and life right now can seem very daunting. And so if we could take a moment to just celebrate achievements with women who are, as I mentioned, not just have reached career heights, but are giving back to the community. We want to recognize that type of service. And I think it's wonderful to be able to take a moment to celebrate individuals. We are so besieged by bad news. It's great to take a few hours to celebrate good news.
And you really elevated the program because it used to be in the convention center. Now you're in Severance. You're in Severance. Right?
We are in Severance. I don't know if I've elevated the program. I have a different approach. And you know what? When I came here, it was at the end of the pandemic. We were not able to have Women of Achievement for several years because of the pandemic. In fact, we pivoted to celebrating women on Channel 3. There was a program that was hosted for several years where we were presenting those that had been chosen each year. And so when I got here, we were slowly coming out of the pandemic. And I thought, well, let's try something different instead of the luncheon, which was always very successful. And people looked forward to it. I had attended it before I came to YWCA. But I just thought it might be an interesting way to pivot in terms of doing something different. And so going over to Severance, they've been a wonderful partner to us. A whole different atmosphere,
right,
and a different type of program.
Yeah,
that's what we've been able to do.
Kind of thought about it, you know. So what are you looking forward to most on that evening, June 4th?
Let me be very honest. This is our largest fundraiser. I mentioned the programs that we offer, but we have to be able to pay for those programs. And we exist on the kindness of strangers, as the statement goes, due to support from the community. And so this is one way to support the YWCA. The money that we raise from Women of Achievement goes right back into those programs so we can educate young children or provide the housing that we have for our young adults. So this is a mechanism to raise dollars. And so that's the biggest thing about Women of Achievement, being able to reach our goal, which is to raise $300,000. We're pretty close right now. I am certain we will not only meet it, but exceed it. and being able to raise those dollars so we can continue to exist, continue to provide the necessary programming. The landscape right now, in terms of attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, attacks on nonprofits, is very daunting. And so the fact that we are still here, we will always be here. We've been here over 150 years. We will continue to be here. But these types of programs are what are so necessary to ensure that we continue to provide services to the community.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I have never thought about my legacy. That's a pretty interesting question. I am just, I'm out here trying to do the best I can to serve the city of Cleveland, the city I love, the city that's been wonderful to my family. Doing what I can to ensure equity for all communities. That's a legacy, a family legacy. Part of my own DNA in terms of my responsibility to give back to the community that's been so good to my family throughout these many years. So I think if I am able to serve it the best I can, to give back to a community that's been wonderful to me, then I think that'd be a pretty good legacy.
I think you're doing a wonderful job.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure and an honor.
This has been great fun.
Tell your dad I said hello.
I will do that. I will.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in. I'm Cornell Calhoun III for Conversations with Cal and TV 20. And remember, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation.